Hello, welcome to CLSP Politics. Sean Briscoe speaking. We're going to be talking about gerrymandering in Texas. Always a fun conversation. I've run congressional seats. I ran them in 2018, and we didn't really even know what our primary congressional district even would look like until almost the filing date in December of 2017. And keep in mind, the primary is in the even year, so that would have been 2018 March. So we literally didn't know what congressional district we were running in until roughly 4 months before the primary. So at that point, when they say, "Oh, money doesn't win races," when have a constricted timeline of 4 months, keep in mind there's a whole bunch of holidays and New Year's and school starting all up in there. So really, if you really boil it down, you're talking maybe 6, maybe 8 weeks of real campaigning that's possible when you know what your district actually looks like. So it's a real thing. And so we did not know until we filed, and that was when the state secretary said, "Nope, these are the districts. You're good." And that was 2018. Now here we are in 2025, getting geared up for 2026. So the Republicans are going to go after very specific seats. Trump has thrown out that he wants 5 more seats in Texas, which means that it would reduce. Right now, the Democrats control 12 and the Republicans control 25. Keep in mind that by percentage of the people, just let's look at the presidential election. Over 40% of Texans voted Democrat for the Democratic president, which means that out of the 30 was that 37 seats, really the Democrats should at least control 15 of those. And we're at 12. I mean, 15 conservatively. We're at 12. They want to put it down to 7. So 42 plus percent of the population voted Democrat. And they want to make sure that of that group, 20% are represented by Democrats. That's not very democratic. It's just not. And the founding fathers would definitely not approve. So that's what's happening in Texas. The MAGA GOP, and they are all MAGA now. If they're complicit, they're part of it. There's none of this, well, more of a reasonable, no, sorry. If you're voting for them and voting for that, you are in that. It's just like not everyone in Germany were Nazis, but there were good Germans. So they're complicit to the overall problem. Where is Texas MAGA Republicans going to cut? Well, they want to go after 4 specific congressional districts, and if they, affect uh, a few others around that, so be it, right? So, man, the GOP's got a real hard on for Houston. I mean, between what they did to the Department of Education in Houston, the fact that they won't hold a special election until a year after the representative had passed away for the seat that's in Houston. So there's 780,000 Texans that have no representation in Congress right now. None, zero. They have none. Outside their 2 senators, they have absolutely no representation whatsoever in the legislative branch. Fascinating. 780,000 Texans. So, and there's a lot of those that are Republicans, in fact. Fascinating. So they want to go after those 9, the one that the vacated seat, and then the 2 others that are in Houston, and then the 33rd that's in Dallas. Now, the 33rd in Dallas is, well, all of these are predominantly districts with Hispanic and African American, and actually a good chunk of Asian population. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that all racists are Republican. I'm not saying all Republicans are racist at all. But I'm saying all racists are Republicans, and they're writing the policy right now. So the fact they're going to disenfranchise huge chunks of population. So each one of these seats is 780,000 people. So we're talking about disenfranchising. What is that? 200. I mean, 2 million and change worth of U.S. Texas citizens. 2 million. There are states with fewer people in them than that. Imagine disenfranchising all of Montana. Like, oh no, oh sorry, Montana. What you decide and what you think does not matter. The whole state. So that's fun. Mark Vesey, who's in District 33, I've actually met him. He was a young Democrat in Dallas back in the day. He goes on to say, obviously, it's done in order to be able to maximize gains at the expense of everyone else's rights, particularly in case of the rights of blacks and Latino voters. He's not wrong. Sylvia Garcia, who's in the 29th, this is in Houston. Let's call this what it is: a brazen racist power grab. It's pathetic and rotten to the core, a desperate attempt to ensure that they can keep the majority of House representatives by force, be force, despite the Trump increasingly unpopular agenda for our country. And I want to talk about 4 basic methods of gerrymandering here. There's something that's been floated around. It's called, basically, it's the dumb version of gerrymandering. Like, before we get into this, let's talk about the mistake the Republican Party could be making here. So, since Trump was elected, I've watched all the special elections. I was part of the Supreme Court work in Wisconsin, where we took that seat by huge margins. And I have a show that's actually going to go into detail talking about what we did and how we did it, and how that can be, replicated throughout the country. There's some field program engineering and things of that nature that I will go into. But let's talk about what trouble the Republicans could be getting themselves into. So if you go back and you look at all the Supreme Court race in Wisconsin, you look at all of the special elections, like there was that R+15 in Pennsylvania, that state Senate seat that went Democrat. So what they're doing is, last gerrymandering cycle, when after the census data came out, the Republicans decided they're going to fortify their congressional districts and get them all as R+20 as possible. And they did a pretty decent job. Really, if you look at some of the maps that they drew, trust me, the voters are not picking their elected officials. The elected officials are picking their voters, and it's with extreme prejudice and in pretty much every way that word could be used. So there's a few ways they've done it in the past, and I want to talk about some of those some of those processes. First, it's called hijacking. This is one of the more interesting ones. This puts incumbent politicians from the same party who previously represented different districts into the same district, so that they basically can use their name recognition against each other, and they end up beating each other up instead of a Republican. So they'll do some of that. That's fun. Kidnapping. This is when they move an incumbent politician's voters base to another district, leaving them stranded in a new district with less support. And that's what parties will do to politicians. That's the politician level work that they do to try and make candidates move or have to have second residencies and things of that nature. Just because honestly, being an incumbent's worth 5 points on the ballot. 5 points, just right off the top. So name recognition's a lot of what happens in a ballot box. So you walk in your little booth and you're like, well, I'm not really sure, but I know the name. Click. I mean, especially when you get down ballot, but it happens. Cracking. Cracking takes a group of voters and spreads them out across several districts to dilute their influence enough that they are not able to elect any representatives that reflect their views. So that's what they're going to do. That's what kind of they undid. Because what they basically did last cycle was they did the packing. They packed and crammed. I call it the ghettoization of the vote. To cram as many of one type of voter into a single district, so they're only able to elect one representative rather than allowing them the influence electoral to outcome in several districts. So this is when you take all the people of color and put them in one district. And that's what they did last cycle. What they're going to do this cycle is the cracking. And they're going to do like a little bit of cracking, just itty bitty cracks. And what they're going to do is they're going to go in and they're going to just shave off votes. They're going to take in one side of the equation, they're going to make those Republican seats a little bit more competitive. But then they're going to try and push those 50-50 seats, 45-55 in favor of the Republicans. And that's what they're going to try and do. And that's literally what they're going to do in Texas. So they're cracking. They just did some packing. So they're going to unpack a little bit, crack a little bit more, and see what they come up with. But because of all of that big, terrible, horrible bill they passed in Congress, I mean, they went after healthcare. In Texas alone, they're going to have to shut down at least minimum 16 rural hospitals. And in rural Texas, healthcare was already sketch enough. Now you're going to have to drive your grandma 4 or 5 hours before you can get to a hospital with the appropriate cardiac emergency systems to keep her. I mean, this is, for one, this is going to have a couple effects. People are going to realize this is not a place I can live because there's no healthcare. I've got diabetes or I've got a heart condition and I need to have a hospital available to me. Since there isn't one here, I have to move. So they're going to move to where their hospitals are, and that'll be urban and suburban counties. So you're going to see even more of a population shift, which is going to mess with when they do the census data in a couple years, in a few years, 5 years from now. So that's going to have an effect. And then you, of course, those hospitals employ a lot of people, and I talked about this in one of my other shows. It's a reverberation of economic plight that's going to go out, because effectively these hospitals are some of the best employers in these rural counties outside of the government themselves. That includes county offices and Department of Education, things of that nature. Prisons. Texas got a lot of prisons. And agriculture. And of course, if you get in West Texas, trade out agriculture for oil. But these are really well-paying jobs. Well, it's going to be hard to get personnel to run an oil rig. If they get hurt, there's no medical facility anywhere near. So you're going to have to pay those people a lot more to take that kind of risk. So there you go. You've already affected the number one energy producing state in the country through a backdoor. Oh, we cut funding for healthcare. The hospitals themselves employ a huge number of service industry personnel, doctors, nurses, you name it. And they're connected to hospices and things of that nature. So you're going to see all that go away. And so all this cracking and packing they're doing is based on the current situation, but they already took both hands and shook the Etch-a-Sketch, and now it's a blank slate. We don't know what the effect's going to be. So that's an interesting problem the Republicans have by redrawing these maps. They're basing it on old data, and that could get them in a lot of trouble. So where is the impact of all of this extreme partisan bias? Well, the Brennan Center, says that maps gave Republicans a net 16 to 17 seat advantage over the last decade in Michigan, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania alone. And that was before they started heavily gerrymandering Texas. And we already talked about if 42, 40, between 42 and 47% of Texas votes blue, and they want only 20% of the congressional seats to be Democrat. Well, I mean, there's another 15 seats by itself. So now what we have is a minority majority rule, which, if anyone's read history, does not end well for anybody. What can be done? Well, they tried something. It's called the Freedom to Vote Act, and it got destroyed. So that's gone. And that would have actually solved all these problems. But it's gone now. And I don't think it's coming back. We can fight in the courts. But, the Republicans stole about 3 Supreme Court seats. So that's kind of cooked. So that's done. But I'd like to talk a little bit about what it is we actually can do. So I'm going to talk about this in the show about the experiment we did in Green Bay in Wisconsin. There's a universal voter that just doesn't vote. They're about 37% of Texas right now. They just don't vote. Most of the statewide elections are decided within about 3 to 4 points, more often than not. Beto got within 1 point. Beto scared the crap out of the GOP. I'll bet money that's a lot of the reason they're doing this stuff right now. Plus, nobody likes Ted Cruz. Let's be clear. So one thing we can do is we can do programming for campaigns and voter education that focuses on that. And if you're like, oh, you talking to those people doesn't do any good, got some news for you. I've got math on that. It's what we did in Wisconsin. It's how normally they don't declare that Supreme Court race until like midnight. They called that race at 8:30 p.m. I know exactly how we did it. I know the systems. I know the programs. I know everything because I was a data director. So I'm going to do a whole show on that. And I think that'll open up a lot more possibilities. What if the gerrymandering didn't make a difference? So I'd like to end on this quote. Political gerrymandering makes incentive for most members of Congress to play to the extremes of their base rather than to the center. Barack Obama, arguably very much a centrist in our political landscape. I mean, although he did some amazing things, ACA, bar none, but at the end of the day, over his 8 years, he had 18 months where he could actually do something, and then let's be honest, the Senate played him. And he lost all those Supreme Court seats. So, yeah, it's legit. So, my thinking is that this is really, really going to be bad, not just for Texas. Texas is already so deep in it. I mean, I don't know actually how much it would really change Texas because our legislature and our Senate is so broken in this state. And people don't even realize that our lieutenant governor and the railroad commissioner are the 2 most powerful elected seats in this state. People don't even know that. A huge lack in voter education in this state. So, yeah, I think that what's needed is a paradigm shift in how we reach out to voters. So my next video is probably going to be a lot about that. So stay tuned, and I will talk to you guys later. And thank you for subscribing to my Substack. And this will also go out on YouTube in a week or so. All right.